Just to cover how I felt about the first two Iron Man movies, the first movie I thought was great. I thought it was a great introduction to the revitalized Marvel Universe, but even on its own, Iron Man was a solid action film. It rightfully turned Robert Downey Jr. into a superstar, and overall, I think it's a good film. When it comes to the second film, I absolutely hated it. I thought almost everything that went well with Iron Man 1 went terribly with Iron Man 2. The villains were either uninteresting or underplayed. The writing went almost nowhere. And I honestly just didn't like the second film at all. And that made me very skeptical about watching a third movie, because I knew they were going to make a third movie. And in fact, probably the one thing that tipped the scale for me was when I heard that they had replaced Jon Favreau as writer and director with Shane Black. Now, for anybody who doesn't know who Shane Black is, he was basically, in the 90s at least, he was the highest paid screenwriter in film history. He wrote the entire Lethal Weapon series, but more importantly, he made the independent film Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, for which I will forever be grateful to him. And I'm sure Robert Downey Jr. is very grateful to him as well, because Kiss Kiss Bang Bang was the film that really kickstarted his career before he was cast in Iron Man. So it's no surprise that he decided to get Shane Black involved in the third film. Now, do I think this was a successful partnership? Comparing it to Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, I would have to say no. But compared to Iron Man 2, I would say most certainly. Overall, my response towards Iron Man 3, my initial response anyway, has just been... it's just been kind of a middling response, to be honest. It ultimately lands somewhere between the first and second movies, because there are some things it does very well, and other things it does not do as well. A quick recap would be that Iron Man, aka Tony Stark, faces post-traumatic stress disorder from his adventures in New York City, which I'm not going to go into if you haven't seen The Avengers. But he's also got a brand new villain to face, and according to Iron Man fans, it is a villain that they have been waiting for a very long time. It is the Mandarin. So there was a lot of hype towards his introduction into the third movie. Basically, what we get throughout the film is basically a one-upmanship over the threats that he faced in earlier films. So the attacks become more personal, more dangerous. Looking at the cast themselves, it's safe to say that Robert Downey Jr. could play the role of Tony Stark in his sleep at this point. He is completely familiar and comfortable with the role, so honestly, I think he did a very good job in the role again. I even thought he did okay in Iron Man 2, so that wasn't a huge surprise. The same can be said for Gwyneth Paltrow. I didn't think her character was very well written, especially in the second film. But just like with Robert Downey Jr., even when Gwyneth Paltrow is given really, really bad writing, she is still able to maintain the believability of her character. So I don't have any complaints towards her either. Don Cheadle as War Machine, he did a great job too. Guy Pearce was a very interesting addition to the cast. Ty Simpkins as a kid who helps Tony Stark out at one point in the film, he did alright too. And honestly, that's really the most I've got to say in the positive aspects of the film. In terms of the negative aspects, Rebecca Hall was wasted in this movie. I know what kind of character she's supposed to play, but it was such a bland character. I actually really feel sorry for her because she's a great actress. She could have done so much more in this film if she had only been given a proper character to play. When it comes to other cast members that I didn't think did very well, I gotta point out Jon Favreau. Because aside from writing and directing, Jon Favreau also played a role as one of Tony Stark's sidekicks in the first two movies. I've just noticed that his character becomes less and less relevant with each passing film. And I'm sorry to say, I didn't really like Jon Favreau in the role either. Maybe it was the bad writing, or maybe it was just him giving a bad performance, I'm not sure. Either way, I didn't really like Jon Favreau in the film. Nor, surprisingly, did I like Ben Kingsley in the role. I'm not going to go into why, because that would go too far into spoiler territory. I'm just going to say that they have a special take on his character that, while it was unexpected, I just don't think adds up very well. And Ben Kingsley didn't do much to alleviate the awkwardness of the performance. I'm not going to go too deep into it. Just you'll see what I mean. Overall, though, it's a successful film for what it wants to be. It wants to be a continuation of the Iron Man story. It wants to up the stakes. It wants to build on the action. And Shane Black was a good choice for that because he has always cemented himself in the action genre anyway. As a result, the action is very over the top and silly, but it's well choreographed and well filmed, so people who can suspend their disbelief will have a fun time watching it. The thing is, though, I don't think it was as good of an improvement as I'd hoped. It's just my subjective opinion that it just kind of fell onto the mediocre side, honestly. I thought the cast was hit or miss. I thought the comedy was hit or miss, which is a shame because Shane Black did a really good job with Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, so maybe my expectations were a bit too high. But overall, it was a very hit or miss film. Some parts worked very well, other parts didn't. Some of the cast worked very well, others did not. And overall, it just kind of balances out. So overall, it was a mediocre film. That's just my opinion anyway.